right, thank you for staying with the Town Hall. We're talking about the upcoming International Conference on Population Development. There's a lot of controversy that comes with it, but my panelists say that all the intentions are good, the misconceptions are not valid. So, let's open the floor for questions, and I'll start with you, ma'am. Just introduce yourself. I know you're Anne Bugwa, family lawyer, but just introduce yourself.
I'm Anne Bugwa. I'm a mother, a family lawyer of about 26 years. My first question is to Angela. She said she agrees with what Anne Kioko said to a certain extent. I would want you to tell us which is that extent. What don't you agree with? What do you agree with? Number two, I think the concerns raised here are very valid. We did a 2010 No Yes campaign, and now we have learned it's important to interrogate any document, any issue. Because the issues we raised then, and some people say they were not valid, but now we know they are valid. So in the spirit of public participation, which is in our constitution, we would want the issues of ICPD seriously interrogated. And then I would want to understand let me go to the laws. The impression being created here is that there are some things which are not locally accepted, and there are some things which are. And we are being given like an assurance that some things cannot pass in Kenya. But when we look at the draft laws which are coming up, we are finding a thread of sexual reproductive health rights in most of them. For example, if you follow the reproductive health bill from 07 to 2014, you will find reproductive health services for adolescents being captured very comprehensively. So is abortion for adolescents and many other things. Shockingly, our children's bill 2017 also has the same thread. We are giving our children the right to reproductive health services. I would want to understand how is it that we are saying some things are not yet accepted in Kenya, but we are finding them in every draft that comes out. Okay. Are the people concerned about that? Okay. As a family lawyer, finally, may I ask about parental responsibility? Because I think the biggest authority in a child's life is a parent's voice. Are the parents consulted on everything to do with adolescent so-called reproductive health services? And I ask this because I know if you remove the moral boundary, the society will be rotten. Okay. The family is a basic unit of society. We've got to protect the family.
All right. Yeah. All right. Dr. Mbai, I'll let you respond to that as well. And Angela, there was a question to you before I take the other one. The question was, to what extent do you agree with what Anne Kioko said, and to what extent do you disagree? Anne Kioko raised the issues on opposed to abortion, sexual, reproductive, and health rights, comprehensive sexuality, contraception to adolescents, and LGBT.
Well, I don't say I agree to what Anne said. I said there are issues in ICPD or in the Kenyan Constitution, like reproductive health rights that are mentioned in the Constitution. Yeah. Two, the issue that Dr. Kibara has talked about comprehensive sexuality education, that has been discussed are still in discussion. So I'm not saying that I agree, because I cannot agree to things which I know are not right. Okay. We are in a country which is sovereign. We have a constitution that dictates what is to be taken on board and not. And coming to the issues that the lawyers talked about, I think we live in a country where we hide our heads in the sand. We have our moral responsibility as a country, as adults and everything. But Trevor, let me ask a very genuine question to all of us. Outside ICPD and everything else, are we having teenage pregnancies in this country? Are we having more adolescents getting new HIV infections in this country? Are they getting them airbornely? So when you talk about, a lot of times when I hear people talking about and sexualizing and making it like we are encouraging children to get sex education, I really sympathize, because a lot of times it's out of misinformation. if you read about, and I think we were taught, I think in class 6 or class 5, about the human anatomy, the reproduction, all that, what are the processes, the feelings, the emotions. We are no longer teaching that to our children. What is happening at the end of the day? Are we saying that now we are living in a vacuum where we better hide behind moral responsibility and not talk about the things that we are seeing happening? We are losing many young girls. They are the ones who are dying in childbirth because of obstructed labor. Their bodies are not ready.
Okay.
We are getting more HIV infections. We are getting all these things. So are we going to continue living and hiding behind the scenes, yet we are losing so many people? Are they not people? Or are we not concerned about life?
All right.
There are some things that we really need to ask ourselves. And when women are getting killed, when gender violence, when women cannot access, even are not empowering women enough to make decisions, are we happy with that? When we are losing women in childbirth, every day 22 women are dying in childbirth in this country. So we can't discuss that because it's not important. Is it not a right for that woman and that child? Because as we lose those 8,000, we are losing almost over 40,000 newborns.
Okay.
Is that normal? Is that right?
Okay. Dr. Gitau, what do you make of these arguments that you hear? You heard of the issue of abortion for adolescents. What is your understanding of sexual, reproductive, and health rights? Because I think this is where we are stuck.
Okay. As Kenya Medical Association, number one, our mission is to champion for quality health and to champion for the welfare of the doctors. So we stand by what WHO defines as health as being a state of physical, psychological, and mental well-being. So when you talk about reproductive health, we still go back to what health is. So when it comes to health, are they in a psychological well-being? Are they in a physical well-being? So that is what we are missing here. Is the health of the mother being addressed at the end of the day? After ICPD, will we still have more women dying? Those are the conversations we are going to have. So when it comes to over-sexualizing of our society, we should be questioning our moral values of the discussion of women dying and girls getting pregnant, because they are getting pregnant because there is a value system, and even going ahead to sexual violence. A big number of the teenage pregnancies are due to sexual violence. And until we create solutions to those problems and not just engage each other on ideologies or religious differences, that is the time we shall save our women.
Okay. Dr. Mbai, is there anywhere in this conference where abortion of to adolescents and being given contraception will be discussed? Because that is where the concern for the parents is, and sex education as well.
Absolutely not. I think the program has been uploaded on the website of ICPD 25. There are a lot of sessions where people are sharing ideas, people discussing what is working best in their environment. I heard something about China coming to tell us about abortion. That is absolutely not true, because the session we have on demographic dividend, how to reap a dividend from the very large numbers of young people we have in this country right now. We have a very big population of young people. Over 65% of the people in Kenya are under 25 years. So one of the sessions where China will be on the panel is, as part of the Asian Tiger, is how they reaped their dividend. You know, how they invested in those economic activities, education, like TVETs, which we have in the country, to help reap a dividend. Because we are in a situation where they were in the 60s. We have a very big population of young people. The issue of abortion, it is not there. It is not on the table. Sexual and reproductive health rights is on the table, as Dr. Wahome read, in relation to UHC. And these are opportunities to learn from other countries. Kenya won't be sharing part of the pilot of the UHC, which has been done in 4 counties. So we won't be trying to show what UHC we can achieve for women in terms of free maternity services, in terms of making sure that children have immunization, they don't die. You know, all those issues which are in the UHC package for Kenya. That's part of what we won't be sharing under that session. And we won't be hearing from Singapore, from other countries on how, from Thailand and other countries on how UHC is working in their countries. So I would really want us to visit the website. Let's download that program and let us see where abortion is being discussed. As per Kenya, if we may discuss Kenya and abortion, the Constitution is very clear. Abortion is only allowed where the health of the mother is in jeopardy. So Kenya supports abortion to the extent of the law. If we were to say, how do you implement that to the full extent of the law? Then if a woman's life is in danger, then the law of Kenya, the Constitution, which I hope our learned friend here can clarify, does provide that in the Constitution. But of course, there are guidelines on how that can be done. So I think some of these things, we just need to unpack them. And there was something about, it's gone off, about consent. For parental consent. In Kenya, there are no services offered to children without consent from their parents. Children under 18 years are expected to get consent, especially things to do with reproductive health, if it's, family planning, even the vaccines which were being given. We need consent of the parents. It is not automatic that the child walks in and gets services. Of course, they are special children, if I may call them special children. For instance, they are the mature adults, the mature adolescents. A child is, to me, is still a child, is 16 years, but they have 2 children. And we know that is a reality in this country. So they walk into my clinic and they want contraceptives. And they tell me they're in a regular, in a stable, they are in a relationship. They are 16 years, but with 2 children. I think I'm obligated to give the contraceptives.
All right. Dr. Ngare, are you convinced?
Trevor, we could go around this and talk about very nice things. Let me just point out a few things. Just the other day, we were in court about organizations that had come to decriminalize homosexuality. You remember that discussion? Not too long before that, we were in court again because of abortion guidelines that had been brought in and had been interpreted to mean that anybody, including nurses and clinical officers, can offer abortion services. There is an organization called the Center for Adolescent Studies in Kenya that had been teaching comprehensive sexuality education by the name The World Starts With Us. The World Starts With Me. In this country, illegally. And it took the steps of caring parents to confront the Ministry of Education, only to find that they had no sanctions to do that. And they'd been teaching these things from 2015 or even earlier. So we can say what is on paper, and we can see what is happening in the background. And that is what really hurts me. Our Constitution is very clear. The life of a person starts at conception. Abortion is not permitted. And the only thing that is allowed is the opinion of a trained health professional. And that opinion is then limited to certain areas that the health professional will be held to account for allowing termination. So it's very wrong to tell Kenyans that abortion is allowed in this country. It is actually the opinion of a trained health professional that is allowed to determine when the mother's life is in danger, when there is need for emergency services and things like that. So we have to be very careful what message we send out there so that we don't get confused.
Kanjama, legally speaking, and I'll open the floor for more questions here. Even if, say, for example, some things were sneaked in, aren't you able to challenge this in court?
Trevor, I've actually had the experience of handling some of these matters in court. In our Kenyan courts, I've been in the High Court, in the Court of Appeal. Soon we'll be in the Supreme Court on some of these issues. And I can tell you, the court is given the last word in interpreting words, in interpreting legal provisions. And when there is ambiguity that sometimes is deliberately or maybe carelessly allowed to remain in certain legal instruments, you find they're going very hard. I can tell you that when you go to court, you find authorities, rulings, writings from South America, North America, Europe, saying that this particular phrase or word means the following. I remember in one of the cases, for example, we had, there was a group that was pushing an agenda of sexual rights that is founded on what are called the Yogyakarta Principles. A very liberal document, but it has been quoted in some publications of the United Nations, the World Health Organization, and this was now being pushed as the norm, as a standard for civilized countries. Yeah. So what I would say is that words can be very pregnant with meaning that at the beginning you may not see. Yeah. And what I think I feel is that there are many people involved with the conference who genuinely want the good thing, the right thing, maternal health, and so on. But maybe unknown to some of them is that some of the phrases that have been peppered here and there, like sexual health and rights, have very elaborate and specific content that goes beyond the term that you may use it with a certain intention, but because it has been captured in certain publications otherwise, it means something else. So you cannot predict, if you're not very precise in your language, what direction that is going to take. And I think that is a concern of some of the other people here. What I feel is that there are genuine desire to have progress from ICPD 25, and there are also genuine concerns that in the course of having that progress, certain innovations will come in that will damage family rights, cultural rights, and religious values, which were cited in ICPD Cairo Conference 1994.
All right, let's bring in more concerns here. You had a question. Just keep it brief so that we get as many as we can.
Thank you, Trevor. My name is Paul Njoroge. I have two questions, one to Dr. Josephine. The program of action for ICPD Cairo developed several principles. Principle number 9 says that family is the basic unit of the society, and hence it must be strengthened. Kenya is making some commitments in ICPD 25. What is the place of family? The next question goes to Dr. Wahome. The whole aspect of sexual reproductive health rights, where abortion features, from where you stand as a professional, is there a time when the life of a mother is threatened and the only medical option is to kill the unborn?
Okay. I'll take another question here, then give you a chance to respond really briefly so that we get as many as we can. Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Dr. Jean Kagia. Just one question to Josephine, Dr. Bai. You said that you had something about comprehensive sexuality education. It was alluded, and it is true, that this has been piloted in this country without the knowledge or the permission of the parents, and children have been taught that sexuality is their right. And to Angela, I get your concerns in terms of the teenage pregnancies and all that, but I hope you also know that this country has got a curriculum which is called Life Skills, which has gone through public participation, has gone through the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, but we have a problem in that although each class is supposed to have a lesson per week on that particular subject, it is not being addressed. So many schools don't teach it. And I think rather than bring in a new curriculum, like the world starts with me, it would be first of all better for Kenya to go ahead, teach what is already accepted, and then if there are any gaps, evaluate and see if there are any gaps, then you can come and say, are there chapters that we need to improve on? Because it is very, very important that what has gone through public participation is done. We cannot overlook the fact that these very young people have a lot of risks in their delivering of those babies because they are very small. But on the other hand, we can't say that just because we have no program, we can't let them go and deliver, or we can get worried about their dates.
All right.
Yeah. So those
I'll
two
let them have
points.
to answer those questions first. Very briefly, and Dr. Mbai, I think you have the bulk of them. What is the place of family? That's the first question. And are you aware that there's been comprehensive sexual education that has been piloted in the country without the parental consent or even knowledge? Very briefly. And then
Yes, I think very briefly, the Kenyan 17 commitments, it touches on family in several different ways, like issues of social protection, issues around education, providing basic education, but doesn't speak to the family specifically as for the principle of the program of action. But we had a meeting with the religious group the other week, and there were some issues which they raised, which I don't have now the final document, which my technical people are looking into. And I know the place of the word family in one of the commitments was very critical to the religious people, and we don't see any reason, because even as a government, family is critical in terms of even when we move any issue to do with whatever it is, if it's education, if it is reproductive, the family is critical.
Okay.
In terms of comprehensive sexuality education being piloted, at Trevor, I think I would say there are no institutions where there are no rogue individuals. That activity was not done with authority from many of the government agencies, and when it came to the light, or when this was reported to the Ministry of Education, who are responsible for schools, the matter was taken very seriously, and the organization stopped from doing that.
Okay.
But we do have rogues everywhere in whichever profession.
All right. Dr. Wahome, is there a time when the life of the mother is threatened that you have to perform abortion?
Thanks, Trevor, and thank you for the question. The truth is that there is none. And the problem is that is with the definition of the word abortion. Because in medicine, abortion is not a treatment, it is a diagnosis. So if a mother comes and she's bleeding and she's pregnant, then we say she has a threatened abortion, is a diagnosis.
Okay.
And then when you treat, you try and preserve the pregnancy. The way we understand the term abortion in the Constitution is that it is not a medical definition. It is a definition according to the society. So abortion is basically the deliberate killing of a preborn person. I don't want this baby, Daktari, can you do something about it? Okay, so the deliberate killing of that preborn person is what abortion is, as discussed in the Constitution.
Okay.
So if you understand that, then there is nothing in the world for me as a doctor that would help me, would make me prescribe that for treatment. Let's give a few examples. If a mother has a pregnancy in the tube, what we call the ectopic pregnancy, that pregnancy is abnormal. It is a pregnancy that would kill the mother. And when I go in to do surgery to remove that bleeding tube, my intention is not to kill the child. So the operation I will do is not called an abortion. Now, if I have a mother who has very severe high blood pressure, and she's, say, 28 weeks, 29 weeks, premature baby, then the treatment of ending that pregnancy would be a cesarean section, where I would be able to remove a baby who is alive and give that child a chance to live, even as I solve the problem of the mother. However, if I was to inject that baby with something that kills it before it is born, that's an abortion. But the other one would be delivering a premature baby to save the life of the mother.
Oh, well.
And finally, we have a patient who has come in who has been sexually assaulted, who is pregnant, and is so distressed she is threatening to commit suicide. That woman's health is in danger. But when I examine her, the diagnosis I find is that she actually has depression with a normal pregnancy. all right? So the treatment is to treat the depression, but you do not kill the unborn child. So that's the understanding, and it's important, it's very clear to the country.
All right, there's a lot of questions here. You really have to be brief because I'm running out of time. Yeah?
Thank you.
With your name and straight to the question. Just one question each, please.
I'm Richard Kaketo from the Catholic University of Eastern Africa. I have two. One is Madam Josephine from NCPD. Would you like to go on record again that abortion will not be discussed at ICPD 25?
Okay.
Two, one of the giveaways is the suspicion of leaving out pro-life and pro-family organizations. I'll repeat that. The security clearance and the technical clearance you've referred to should not be locking out international organizations that have consultative status with the United Nations.
Okay.
If you could just name one pro-family or pro-life organization that has been registered for this conference, we will be grateful.
I think White Ribbon should be one of them, but that's for Dr. Mbai to respond to. There was another question somewhere here. Yeah, very briefly. Straight, just one question, please.
Okay, my name is Winnie Kiche. I'm a student from the Catholic University of Eastern Africa. My concern goes to Dr. Gitau. Okay, as we all know, each and every one of us has a right to life and it should be protected. And we've had so many cases of death at birth or poor maternity services. So what stringent measures can be put into place to enhance these cases are done away with so that we can have low rates of death during births or even the low infant mortality rates?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, there's another one here. I hope the panelists are taking their questions.
My name is Peter Onyanja from the National Organization of Peer Educators. I'll not ask a question, I'll make a comment.
Very briefly, sir.
Can I get pregnant through anal sex? That was a question posed to me when we were implementing one of the programs, and that came from a Standard 5 girl. Now, I needed to give a response to that. Do I have a policy opportunity to have that kind of conversation?
Okay.
Finally, we have to get this opportunity to disabuse some use of terminologies. Nowhere has it ever been discussed that there is an existence of sex education in the context of our conversations. Severally, we have read in the print media conversations about sex education, even when members of that very media have sat in our forums and listened to sexuality, and that has brought us a lot of problems. So sometimes, even when we are doing the devil's advocate opportunity, like what Anne Kioko is doing, it is good for us to also go to deeper research in terms of what we are responding to.
Okay. Very briefly.
The concern is that there are going to be some signed instruments.
There will be some what?
There are going to be some signed instruments.
Okay. Signed instruments.
Signed instruments.
Okay.
That will then be a basis for a discussion at a deeper level.
Okay.
The question I want to ask Dr. is this: where is the place for stakeholders and the Kenyan who may not be consulted in the process of this?
Okay.
And where does he ask these questions?
Okay. Dr. Mbai, you have the bulk of the questions again. Can you confirm?
No.
Yeah, very briefly.
So that Dr. Mbai sometimes to collect her thoughts.
Yeah.
Also because no one is asking me any question. The first thing I think I would like to say is that in terms of Kenyans who want to attend the conference, I think there are many civil society organizations that currently do not fall under the auspices of the NGO board. And I represent the NGO board in at least one or two matters in court. So I think it may be useful to see whether the vetting can be expanded to include other civil society organizations that at least are credible. And maybe there is room for working with church organizations or pro-family organizations so that some of them can take part. And I think also to partly respond to the question by Mr. Kaketo of Catholic University, that even for international pro-family and pro-life organizations, especially pro-family, because the ICPD program of action recognizes protection of family as one of the agenda for ICPD. I think it would be very critical to even do an audit with a week to go of having a balance, because it is when you have a balance and diversity of views that you are likely to have very fruitful deliberation. So I think that would be very useful in regard to the people attending the conference. And then in regard to the instruments, there's a question which has been asked. It is not possible to have an international conference that's just a talking shop without a desire to live with at least a declaration, some document which can guide the member states. And I think one of the concerns is that, yes, there is the approach of making reservations. You can reserve and say we'll not implement a certain part of the document. But because we understand these documents are meant to be delivered by consensus, they can become international law through the customary route, and they bind you despite the reservations that you've made. So that we cannot become just thinking about our own country. We have to be interested in a document, all the clauses of the document that will be applied in any other country of the world. And I think there is room for us to be concerned with what will Norway get out of this document, what will Brazil get out of this document, what will China get out of this document. We cannot remain parochial, we must go global.
Okay. I'll have to take a quick break here on the Monday Town Hall. Keep your views coming on hashtag Monday Reporter, Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. When I come back, I'll take a few more questions very briefly, and then the panelists will respond as we close. We've really run out of time here, but see you in just a bit.